It's 110 degrees outside.
And it's 120 degrees inside here. But you know, we wanted to do this for the aesthetic look. It only took us like 7 hours to set up this new set, but we're doing it for you. So we saw the movie 120 degrees.
There's a woman who's going through a lot of personal trouble. Like she's really depressed and distraught and like on the edge. She and her friends, with her strained relationship with her boyfriend, they're like, well, you know what, let's go on this crazy trip to Sweden. The traditional magical thing that they do. It'll be very interesting. Some of her friends are like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna study this for my, thesis. It's gonna be like this culturally enriching experience. And then they get there and they all
Yeah, so I didn't really know if I was gonna enjoy this film, but I actually enjoyed it a lot. And I think the main reason for it is because there's so much to unpack.
Yeah.
There's a lot that stays with you after you've seen the film.
If I could point to one thing that I loved about the movie, particularly, it's the shot composition. Because every shot is so designed. It's like you can tell that the thought and attention was placed into every detail.
You have a shot where Danny's talking to her boyfriend. Then you have this disconnection that's communicated through the cinematography. There, he's walking into the apartment, and then he's shown in the mirror, and then she's like separated. They're not in the same shot. They're kind of are, but not necessarily. Right. So, and that's what I like about it. But there's so many subtleties like that, like in the cinematography, in the story, in the characters. There's all of these things are connecting in some way, and they're all making you think about what does this mean, what does that mean.
I think the director's eye for that kind of detail is very good. That's probably my favorite thing about Ari Aster, at least from watching these two movies. That's what really stands out.
It's like there's a meaning behind almost everything.
I'm just talking about aesthetically, like from a design point of view. Maybe the reason this stood out so much to me is that I saw it right after seeing Spider-Man. That movie is shot much more conventionally.
Like a lot of movies are nowadays.
It blends into so many other movies from a cinematographic standpoint. That's a word, right? That's a word.
Yeah, that's totally a word, sure.
You get the shot reverse shot thing with like every piece of dialogue. There's nothing interesting about that. Whereas in Midsommar, sure, there's plenty of scenes where two characters are talking to each other, but it's never shot like that.
I might actually add on to that because a lot of times in this film, there's a lot of long one-shots going on.
Yeah.
And that's really helped you stay in the dread of what was going on. Especially when Danny's dealing with the death of her parents and her sister, and you just feel like this horrible, just like clenching, like, ugh.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't let you shy away from it.
Exactly.
Just like if you're experiencing that sort of emotion, you can't just get away from it. It's just, it's there. You have to look at it. Everything's focused on it, even though you're trying to get away from it.
Exactly. Whereas in Aladdin, there's just quick cuts everywhere because they're like, oh, we don't have time to think about the shots we're gonna make.
They're covering up bad cinematography and bad choreography.
Oh, your brain can't process this because it's so cool and it's so fast. Yeah, everyone did a really good job in this film. All of the actors really did well.
They all did good, but like the lead actress was, I thought, fantastic. Like I was blown away. I didn't like Hereditary as much as Midsommar, but the lead actress was fantastic in that too. So both cases, like, really remarkable.
One thing I wish that they would have done more of is that when I saw the trailer, it was lit almost like a comedy film. And I really wish that they actually did more with that. You're like, oh, a horror film in broad daylight. It seemed like that there was a lot of overexposure going on sometimes, which kind of give this ethereal, heavenly effect. And I wish that they did a little bit more with the tenseness, like with the tension that they were building up and such.
Yeah.
But then and then also that goes into my entire point about how this doesn't really feel like a horror film.
Right. I don't have a problem with that, really.
No, I don't either. At first, I didn't really want to see it because I was like, oh, this seems really dark. But then you see it, and it's more of a character study.
Yeah. Honestly, I felt the horror elements that are in there felt almost like forced in. After seeing the movie, I wanted to take them out.
Really?
Yeah.
See, for me, I felt that they were just kind of like secondary, where it was almost like they just kind of put it in there, but it wasn't really his main focus. So I'd be really interested in seeing what he would do if it was just a character study film, not focusing on horror.
Yeah.
I thought the ambiguity of the horror was really fascinating, where it's like, oh, there's a cult out there and they have up practices and no one really knows like how they do their life, how they do their rituals or anything like that. And then you see them like, oh, that's so messed up. And then, I don't know, should we just go into spoilers?
If you talk about this story, you kind of have to talk about spoilers.
Yeah, it's this whole cycle of life thing going on. And so you see the elders like jumping off of the cliff, and then they're falling down to their death, and then someone doesn't die because like they just fell into their feet and like they're almost dead, and so someone comes up with a mallet and hits them a few times, and now they're dead. They're like, oh, that's kind of messed up. And so at the beginning, you're just thinking maybe these cult leaders are just different. You know, maybe that's just the way that they do things here.
Because it's portrayed as though everyone's still really nice. I'm sorry we didn't tell you this is what's going to happen. This is our tradition. This is why we believe it. Everyone's so we love this because it gives us joy and meaning to life. It convinces you enough.
It feels genuine.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I get it. Like it's there's a wholesome side to these people, even if, like, you can look at this and say this is a horrible practice, this is inhumane, and etc. I liked the approach that, well, this might just be a nice group of, like, kind of weird, people who have these traditions that we might consider strange, but there's a gray area that I thought was fun.
Yeah, and that's what I liked about it, because then it doesn't just become about like all the other horror cult films where it's like, oh, they are really serial killers and they're really fucked up.
And that's what you assume as soon as you see them. Like, as soon as they are getting into it, I'm like, oh great, they're just gonna be a bunch of like crazy murders secretly, and everyone's gonna die.
Well,
blah blah blah.
And that's the issue, is that the film starts making them into serial killers, which I hated. And there's a scene that happens towards the end of the film where Danny is finding one of her friends.
I know it was the boyfriend. Who
Yeah,
found
the
him,
Christian. Yeah, Christian runs into the chicken coop, and then you see the guy, and he's like strung up all like Hannibal Lecter style kind of thing, and then the camera pans back, and then you see his lungs are spread out behind his back, and you see that he's still alive, and his lungs are breathing in and out, and I was like, I just thought that these were just some wholesome people that just had messed up practices. I didn't think that they knew anatomy like well enough to have someone still alive and have blood like the lungs, like that just felt too far.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, because if you're building up your cult to make them seem like, oh, maybe they just have messed up practices, that's more fascinating to me than just making them serial killer kind of people.
Right. Everyone there basically had to be complicit with this. So the way that all these kids got killed, like, I guess all these people who seem like they're just kind of wholesome weirdos are actually secret serial killers. They're fine with murdering everybody, because even from a practical tradition standpoint, let's say like, okay, so we need to sacrifice X number of people, or people get old enough they have to die. Okay, so like those could be framed as weird traditions. Then they like bring these people in from another country without telling them what the hell's going on, and they act for a while like they're just being nice to them. Why? Either you go full horror and you actually just have lots of killing, and you have like everyone's crazy, everyone's whatever, or you have no, we're actually this wholesome, like, we're just people who have these weird traditions that involve killing people. Oops. Either one of those could work, but it kind of tried to do both, and that's I felt that was a disconnect in the tension of it, because I started to roll my eyes a little bit.
Yeah, same.
Where it's like, what, you just buried the guy in the garden, his legs sticking up? What?
Yeah. That was silly. That was really silly.
This isn't an efficient way to grow crops or to feed your chickens. Like, you can have other ways that are way, like, you just need fertilizer, you just need like corn or something. Like, come on, you don't need to kill someone to do that. And if they're talking to, well, we have to sacrifice these people to our God.
Find meaningful ways to actually do that. You need to have a flow of the chaos that is happening within your antagonist. So if you are trying to do a messed up cult that has this just messed up ideal or whatever, then at least do something with that. So, okay, maybe we feed them their friends because maybe that's part of our cult.
Right.
Or maybe that's something that's going on. Or, okay, maybe we use the body to go into the garden as fertilizer because so that we can have this rejuvenation of life, like the cycle of life or something like that.
Sure.
Which maybe that's what he was implying for, but it was so just cartoonish of having a leg sticking out of there. It was like, oh, wait, where's the body? Like, oh, there it is.
And then they dug him up at the end to put him in the burning building anyway.
Yeah.
So like,
there's no point.
Yeah, I totally agree. If they had like a twisted reason behind each kill, I would have liked it a lot more. Because also, the way it was portrayed is that they were killed for relatively petty reasons, like, you peed on our tree, therefore we're gonna kill you, or you took a picture of our book, so we're gonna kill you. It's like, I mean...
Yeah, and also I got the indication that these people are actually civilized outside of this.
Yeah, like they live in the real world mostly, I think, or at least some of them do.
Yeah.
Maybe the core of them live there. And I liked that she found this family there. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, because it made the entire story full circle, because in the beginning she's trying to find who will really connect with her, who likes her, who wants to be with her. And then at the very end of the film, she loses everyone, and then she finds the new family, which is reinforced when all those girls are crying with her and like sharing in her pain. I don't really understand why it needed to be this long, because there was a lot of parts that I would have cut just to speed it up a little bit. Like if it was like 20, 30 minutes, I think, shorter, I think it would have been a little bit more effective. Because the only time that the length, I think, would have been good is if it was showing us new scenarios or new things that we haven't really seen before in a horror film like this. Now, in the very beginning, when we're with Danny and we're with that pain and that agony, and it was a long shot, so that worked well. But I felt like towards the end, when the film kept on going with its length in these shots, it just felt monotonous. Like when Christian's being put into the bear, and it's like, I understand. I know what you're doing. Yep, you did the thing I knew you were going to do 5 minutes ago.
I agree. That's actually what I would say is the director's weakest point is in editing and in figuring out which shots are necessary to communicate the story effectively. Now, I think Midsommar is much better at this than Hereditary was. It really uncuts what they're trying to do with the characters in that movie, more so than this one even. And ironically, he's come out and said, oh, I want to make a 30-minute longer version of Midsommar. Like,
no!
What? No. I don't know the Ari Aster's like history or whatever really. I do feel that this is much more disciplined and
Focused.
like narratively focused and narratively competent than Hereditary.
Danny has an arc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Just looking at Hereditary and Midsommar, I definitely think it's moving in the right direction, narratively. I feel like he needs to work with an editor who can help him focus what's...
Yeah, cut some things out.
Yeah. So, Ari, give me a call. Yeah, that is the weakest part of the movie, and it does drag a good bit. I would have easily cut 15 to 20 minutes, maybe more, depending.
Yeah, like there's just shots that just linger a little bit too long. Like, for instance, when they're walking through the woods and then they come to the big sun made out of wood or whatever, they're walking right through that. And it's just taking such a long time for them just to walk through the woods. And I was like, what's this communicating? I'm not getting anything out of this. I'm just seeing them walk. Wouldn't it be more effective if you just kind of like cut it right before they're about to enter? Like you're just seeing them walking through the forest.
I mean, it's kind of a nature / birthing thing. Like they're going through the birthing canal. Like they just took a bunch of drugs. Now they're coming through the forest, like this long tube coming out the hole that's the sunshine. It's like that's the beginning of something. I don't know.
I don't know. There's so much to interpret in this film, but I guess that's what I like about it is that, like, while I might not agree with that point of view,
I'm just speculating.
No. But while I might not agree with that point of view, that's what I like about this film.
Right.
Is that you can make something like that. You can make an observation like that, and you can argue it because this entire film is so artful. Like it's not like the generic films out there. You can think about something like that, like, oh, maybe he meant that. Maybe he meant this.
Yeah.
And so it promotes conversation. And that's not what a lot of films do. And that's what I liked about it is that it's an artful film. While it has its issues, it's one of those films that really just it calls for conversation.
The one thing I wanted to talk about was the drugs. What was with all the drugs? They started off with like, oh, we're just doing shrooms like in the forest before they even get to the camp. Even then, she's like noticing, oh, I'm like turning into the forest or something. It's like, so I guess it's like the drugs help them become more themselves, more in tune with nature.
Which kind of, again, you could tie that into like the life cycle thing and all that.
Yeah.
There's only 2 times that it played a big part into it. One was when Christian has sex with the girl.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of out of it. 2, when she goes and sees her mother again kind of through the crowd, but it doesn't really leave a lasting impact on her. There's no real point. She's like, Mom? Oh, I'm the queen! And that's it. There's no real lasting impact to what is going on with her and the drugs. She has a bad trip, but that's it.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't like that she wasn't having a bad time when she was off the drugs.
So from a like story perspective, is it a control thing? I don't think so. It's not like there's a bad guy at the top of the cult that's like controlling people.
Yeah.
The drugs are helping us be more in tune with who we are and feel more comfortable. Kind of, but they're all willingly taking it because they feel
take away everyone's character, which is what I didn't like about Christian's character, because Christian is built up to be kind of this asshole in the film, and then they're giving him this drug, and then it kind of robs him of his character and his free will. He just kind of goes and like has sex with this girl. Maybe he was trying to go for a tragedy of, Christian's misunderstood because he was on drugs this entire time. So isn't that so messed up that she burned him alive even though she didn't understand?
No, I think with that, they were trying to say that the drugs were bringing out what he was repressing. Because I think their relationship wasn't happy. He was clearly not happy with the sex. And like there was a line earlier where it's like, oh, she doesn't enjoy, making love or whatever. Implying that he wasn't happy in the bedroom. So I was taking that they didn't have, like he was trying to be there for her and support her through this difficult time, but he still wasn't happy in the relationship. And there was a really good scene about a little more than halfway through the movie where it shows the surviving members who were like at the dinner table and they're all really unhappy. Their relationships are broken. They stand out completely from everyone around them who is apparently pretty happy. They're like, happy to be in this commune and drinking drugs all the time, whatever, but but they're in tune and harmony with each other and with nature, etc. Like, it's these Westerners, or, from this messy society that we live in, who aren't happy, who don't have functional relationships.
Right. And that's another good point, because the film also touches on like relationships, just like nature and such.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and the drugs, I think, the best I could come up with in terms of like a thematic purpose of them was to show they were helping people get in touch with
who they really were.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really touched upon. Yeah, it's kind of...
It was messy.
Yeah, it's messy. But at the same time, I can forgive the film for that, because that's what the film's nature is that it's such a narrative. Like in the very beginning, when you see the shot of the winter, and that's when her parents die, and then they're showing, the cult is saying that the winter is supposed to be kind of like the death, and then the summer is like the rebirth or something like that. And so it worked thematically. Like, you can just pick up different segments of it.
Yeah.
And so, it calls for conversation. So I can forgive it for that, because that's what I think the film was trying to do.
Yeah, and it worked to heal Danny as well.
Yeah, the last shot is her smiling.
Yeah.
Which is so messed up, but so cool at the same time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in terms of a film, I would recommend this. I would say easily this is one of the best films of 2019 so far.
Yeah, it's easily my favorite film I've seen this year so far. I know we've probably ragged on it a bit here, but that's just...
You can still like something and still count its flaws.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed it. It didn't drag too much for me to like really put me off it or anything. I'd like to see it again someday.
Yeah, I would too.
I'm very interested to see what the director does next. It's different. And it's artistic. It has something to say about the human condition or society or something.
Ari Aster actually makes films where what cinema is actually made for, instead of just like, more Marvel, please. This one is actually something where it succeeds in trying to do everything effectively: cinematography, acting, lighting, themes, everything.
Yeah.
So it's refreshing. It's refreshing.
Yeah. So definitely go see it. I thought it was really good.
Midsommar.
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 I wouldn't say it's a scary movie, but it is kind of there's a lot of uncomfortable feelings in the movie, I would say. So, if that doesn't sound appealing, maybe don't go see it. But I mean, very well done, beautiful shot, the great lead performance. It was.
Go see it.
Very good movie.
I was most excited for you to come.